Hello, good morning. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, and today's date is Thursday, September 11th, 2025. The time is 11:15 a.m., and I am in West Kendall, Florida. The title of this lecture is September 11th and Gang Stalking. I find it both necessary and fitting to do a lecture on the significance of the events of September 11th, 2001, with respect to its influence on the advent of gang stalking. Now, I must let you know, ladies and gentlemen, that when I talk about clandestine gang stalking, I'm talking about clandestine gang stalking in an ever-changing world. So, America has changed a lot since September 11th, 2001. The world has changed a lot since September 11th, 2001. And with the onset of sophisticated technology, which gets more and more sophisticated by the year, the global economy changes at a rapid pace, society changes at a rapid pace, politics and government change at a rapid pace. Indeed, the very global society that we live in changes at a rapid pace, and technology is the spearhead for that change. I'm a fan of technology. I think technology makes people more productive. It gives them better options with respect to the passing of their time. It eliminates human error in a variety of occupational and personal matters. It makes government more efficient. It makes law enforcement more efficient. It makes the military and its auxiliaries more efficient. Furthermore, it makes the country safer. A cell phone in every hand makes you safer than a society and indeed a world where there is not a cell phone in every hand. There was a time in this country where cell phones were not prevalent. And if something unexpected were to come your way, either maybe you're driving, or maybe you're on the bus, or maybe you're walking somewhere, or maybe you're going about your day as you usually do, and something unexpected happens, you didn't have the luxury of grabbing a cellular device and making a call to any number of persons that could assist you. Nowadays, we have that option. No more going on missions to find payphones or knocking on doors of strangers to use phones in cases of emergency. Now we have various electronic means of not only communication, but making ourselves as sovereign citizens safer. Now, ladies and gentlemen, given that this world has changed so much since 9/11, in such a short period of time, it was only 24 years ago, when the Twin Towers were brought down after an attack of a terroristic nature was carried out on those buildings by hijackers who sought to use planes, namely passenger planes, as missiles in what can only be described as a kamikaze attack on a corporate structure, the like of which had never been seen before in this country, particularly with respect to the death toll, which was approximately 3,500 people who lost their lives that day. And mind you, it wasn't just the explosion from the planes crashing into the side of the building. It was the demolition of the building when it was brought down that also caused a loss of life. And it just wasn't the World Trade Towers that were brought down. It was also WTC 7, a building that was not even struck by an airplane. It was brought down. And apparently there was an attempt to crash airplanes into the Pentagon as well. That failed. And mind you, the loss of life was not just from the explosions from the planes hitting the side of the building and the building being brought down. There were also people who were killing their own selves during 9/11 from the horror of it all. They couldn't take the horror and the shock of what was happening, and they just jumped off a tall building. It might have been the World Trade Center, and ended their own lives. And there's no telling how many U.S. citizens lost their own lives from simply jumping off the buildings. Feeling hopeless, feeling that there was no way to get to the ground, seeing all the carnage and destruction, not having a parachute, not having any way to get out of the flaming building, they just jumped off. In a moment of extreme despair, a very, very catastrophic event in American history. It was a lot like Pearl Harbor. When the Imperial Japanese Army, which at the time it was known for its ferocity, the Japanese Imperial Army was considered one of the world's strongest at that time. And with the kamikaze attack mechanism, which is essentially what happened during 9/11, that was a kamikaze attack. The hijackers of the plane knew that they were requiring their own lives as well as the lives of others by guiding that plane into the side of a building, essentially creating a missile effect. It wasn't much unlike Pearl Harbor at all. It was a surprise attack in the middle of the day, which claimed thousands of lives. This was a World War II style attack, ladies and gentlemen. World War II being one of the quintessential displays of human belligerence between countries that has ever been seen in the history of mankind. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the aftermath of 9/11 and why and how it plays into the coming forth of clandestine gang stalking. So, in the aftermath of 9/11, George W. Bush, who all these years later, looking back on it, I considered him to be an excellent wartime president. He made serious judgment mistakes but these judgment mistakes were not necessarily his fault. Okay, he was told by his Department of Defense apparatus that there were lead 11 attack in Iraq. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Unfortunately, there were no weapons of mass destruction. But George W. Bush, knowing just what he knew and being trusting of what he was being told, I think George W. Bush genuinely acted in the interest of the American people and of American sovereignty. He did what he thought was right. But I believe his judgment was clouded by the poor judgment of the defense apparatus of this country, because there was apparently some bad leads that led the United States to Iraq as opposed to Afghanistan, if I'm not mistaken, which is where that plot to bring down the Twin Towers originated. But, mind you, of course mistakes happen. It's possible that there was an underlying reason that Iraq was targeted. I remember back in the 2005 to 2008 time range, it became a very popular idea that the Iraq invasion had nothing to do with 9/11 at all, that we were not even looking to avenge the 3,500 that were killed. It was simply a way to put American interests, particularly Halliburton, which was a company that had oil interests, a company that the vice president of the day, Dick Cheney, had extensive stock ownership in, would directly profit from the United States being in close proximity with Iraqi oil. I'm not here to judge, ladies and gentlemen. Quite frankly, I think that George W. Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney were both good heads of state. Looking back on it, I think they did what they thought was right given the intelligence that was given to them. Unfortunately, the intelligence was faulty, and the United States spent the next 20 years trying to get to the bottom of the matter. But I digress, ladies and gentlemen. How does 9/11 factor into gang stalking? Post 9/11, we had a very frantic Congress. We had a very frantic American people. There was uncertainty. There was chaos. There was anarchy. People couldn't sleep at night. There was xenophobia towards Muslims. There were fears of a world war. No one knew what was going to happen next. Communication between people and governments was not as sophisticated and as extensive then as it is now. You had people writing their congressmen left and right. People were writing city council. They were writing their mayors. They were writing their state legislatures. They were writing their governors. They were writing the president of the United States, writing them all letters, hoping to get to the bottom of this, hoping to make some sense of what had just happened. The news media of the day spun the narrative. These people and the type of person that would level such an attack on American soil is jealous of American prosperity. They're jealous of American freedoms. They're jealous of the American trajectory through time and space. They wish they could live in a country like America. They're jealous of our democracy. They're jealous of our political establishment. They're jealous of our freedom of religion. They're jealous of our healthcare system. They're jealous of our economic system. They're jealous of our media. They are jealous of us as a people, and they are taking out their jealousy on our architectural structures and they're causing chaos and they're causing terror because they're jealous of us. That was the prevailing narrative for about 5 years, and people started believing that too. But then in a debate, a presidential debate, I think it was 2008. The 2008 was a year where there was no incumbent. It was essentially a group of Democrats which were led ideologically by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, both senators at the time. And the Republican side had a number of candidates as well that were running for the Republican nomination, which were led ideologically by John McCain, Mitt Romney, and Ron Paul. Now, I mentioned Mitt Romney in there because he was the front runner for a while, but ultimately his candidacy got sunk by his unwillingness to talk about his faith. He's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons. He was unwilling to talk to the American people publicly about what his church believes theologically and what its history has shown and what its aims are. He just wanted to call himself a Christian with good political values and hoped that that was going to carry him to the White House, but that just simply wasn't good enough. And ladies and gentlemen, if someone who runs for president is a member of a religion that people don't quite know much about, especially if it's a religion like the Latter-day Saints that has quite a few revisionist components to it with respect to who Jesus Christ was and what he did, the American people want to know about that because the vast overwhelming majority of the American people are not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They're members of either other Christian churches or they just simply aren't members of churches at all. But the people don't really know that church very well, and Mitt Romney should have made it a little clearer what the church is about, what its history shows, and what its plans are for the future, so that people didn't think his candidacy was such an alien thing. People knew exactly who John McCain was. He was a Protestant Christian. He was a Vietnam War veteran. He was a prisoner of war for a while. He eventually became a high-ranking general in the United States Navy. And eventually he got into politics and was very popular with the people. And he was very candid in that 2008 campaign, and he eventually beat out Mitt Romney and Rudy Giuliani, who was up there in the polls for a while, and Ron Paul, who created quite a sensation with his we'll call them maverick beliefs on the economy, and John McCain took that election in 2008. Now, I mentioned the 2008 Republican contest because it was out of that contest that the concept that the reason 9/11 happened was because the United States kept tinkering and meddling in Middle Eastern affairs and kept building military bases in Arab and Muslim lands. And the Muslims hated that. Ron Paul was the first candidate in the 2008 race to bring that up. Before Ron Paul made that statement in a nationally televised debate, they attacked us because we planted ourselves in their land first. If we had not set up military bases in their countries, If we had not tried to install presidents and premiers in their governments, if we did not try to instigate governments and try to control the trajectory of their political economy, they wouldn't have a reason to be upset with us. We need to just pull out of the Middle East, let them mind their own business, and we can mind our own business. Otherwise, if we keep meddling in Middle Eastern affairs, they're going to continue getting angry with us and they're going to keep attacking us. Ron Paul was the first person to have the fortitude to present that truth to the American people. No other politician in Washington had the audacity to put that out there. And he was right. There were actually heads of state of Muslim countries that agreed with that. He's right. The Americans and their allies, they are planting themselves here in our lands. We do not want them here. They are interfering in our political structure. They're interfering in our economy. We want them out. We believe that they defile us. They do not respect our people, culture, or religion. And we want them the hell out of our Muslim lands. And quite frankly, over the next 20 years, we saw a slow but steady phasing out of American troops and interests out of Muslim territories, and sure enough, we saw a down spike in the number of terrorist attacks worldwide. And that's a statistical fact. Compare the number of terrorist attacks worldwide while America was in Muslim countries actively engaging in manipulation, and how many of those same attacks occurred after America began phasing its troops and its influence out of the Middle East. It's not that the United States is not a capable enough country to assist a country in updating their socio-political repertoire. It's just that the Muslim countries have always been closer to China, who is also a world superpower, and Russia, who is also a world superpower, than they have been to the United States. I imagine, and just given the geopolitical history and trajectory of all of these countries, the Middle Eastern countries simply would rather, if they were behind on their governmental operations, on their economic operations, on anything, they would rather it be China or Russia to advise them rather than the United States, because the United States is a Western power, China and Russia are Eastern powers, and the Middle East is closer in culture, in political thought, and in proximity to Russia and China. The Westerners are just too foreign to them. Plus, the Westerners believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, and Middle Eastern people do not. They respect Christ's legacy as a prophet, but they simply do not believe he was a divine person. This is a very important thing to take into consideration when talking about Eastern and Western relations. Now, Ron Paul was right. He came under fire immediately from Mayor Giuliani, who, if I'm not mistaken, in these days has become quite embroiled in legal issues, as was our President Donald Trump for a time. But the nature and the cause of these legal matters require some research to fully understand. Ron Paul didn't stop. He campaigned off of that statement. We're over there, and they don't like that, so they attack us here. Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, that's what needed to be said at that time. And ultimately, Ron Paul ran on that premise of no more American interventionism in countries that are foreign. Let those people live their lives. We'll live our lives. Let them have their beliefs. We'll have ours. Let them have their economy. We'll have ours. Let them have their government. We'll have ours. He ran on that premise of low American interventionism. He called it America policing the world. Essentially, it trying to spread its influence in country to country to country to country, simply as an act of might or bravado, and not necessarily in the interest of the global economy. Furthermore, Ron Paul believed that we needed a gold standard, meaning that every dollar that was printed by the Federal Reserve had to be backed by actual tangible gold bullion. He believed that this standard would drive down inflation and improve the quality of living for all Americans. And quite frankly, a gold standard does do those things. It's just not possible in a superpower, or what you might call a super country, that is a debt-based economy. I mean, if we're a debt-based economy, that means we have to borrow money in order to maintain a standard of living for a house, for a car, for this loan, for that loan, for credit cards, for any number of things. College, okay? We're a debt-based economy. We have to take out loans in order to live our best life. So if you try to impose a gold standard right away on top of that, the progress will be made, but it'll be very, very, very slow, because we have an economy of 330 million people and a continual revolving national debt of $32 trillion. And quite frankly, that cannot be legally or realistically erased simply by instituting a gold standard. But it is a noble idea and something that might be looked into at some point. Although I've always been of the mindset that Bitcoin was a far more innovative invention. But, ladies and gentlemen, let us look into the root cause of the 9/11 catastrophe and how it led to gang stalking. Congress was afraid. The American people were afraid. So what Congress did was it essentially activated its national security apparatus in ways that it had never activated it before. It gave it broad, unchecked powers to surveil not only people who were suspected terrorists, but people who were not, so as to get sort of a grounding in what is the human condition, particularly in America. And then the debate came, well, okay, we have this agency, the National Security Agency. It appears to have very vast surveillance and data gathering abilities. What about the American people? I mean, is this something that's going to affect our lives? Is the data gathered on us something that's going to happen outside of the courts? I mean, if I become surveilled, if I become a target, will I be sent some sort of a notice? Will I be given some sort of a summons? And it became apparent, no, the hell you won't be given a summons. And no, the hell you won't be given any type of warning. You are to be patriotic right now, sir. Now, we just had a tower that was a American landmark Something that was a multi-billion-dollar structure brought care to what their actions were going to lead to the demise of thousands of people. They didn't care about any of that. Okay? You're going to let us do our job, sir. And yes, we are going to hack your phone. Yes, we are going to hack your emails. Yes, we are going to read your text messages and monitor your web browsing history. And yeah, your wife and your kids, they're going to get the same treatment, sir. And you know what? You're going to like it too. You know why you're going to like it? Because it's going to make you safer. Some Americans heard that and said, hey, do what you got to do. I saw what happened in 9/11. Go ahead and surveil me. Matter of fact, surveil the hell out of me, okay? Surveil me at home, surveil me at work, surveil my kids if you want to. It doesn't, go ahead, do what you gotta do. If it makes me safer, do it. Okay? Do it. I'm a patriot. I'm gonna be a patriot, just like the slogan says. Just do it. And then you had other citizens that asked a few more questions. They said, well, okay, it looks like we have this national security apparatus, okay, that has the ability to monitor lots of people and monitor lots of things. This is done so they can identify potential threats to the homeland. Okay. Well, maybe I have some information I don't want you to see. How do I know if I'm being surveilled or not, and what's the criteria? Reasonable thinking. Then you had the people who outright rejected it. They said, well, hell no, you ain't about to surveil me. Because first of all, I don't see nothing in the Constitution that provides for a national surveillance protocol. And I don't care if you're talking about keeping the country safe or what have you. I value my privacy more than I value your capacity to do whatever this national security job is you're talking about. Okay, so you have three different segments of the population that have three different ideas of what national security is with respect to surveillance. Me, I'd say I was more in category 2. I saw the benefit of enhanced surveillance, but I had questions as to what the criteria was as to who they surveilled and why. Especially if the people that were being surveilled were not suspected of any terrorist activity. So, I didn't make too much of a beef about it. I mean, I talked to my significant other at the time about it. I had conversations with family about it. Just passing the time, that kind of thing. Nothing too in-depth. Had classroom discussions on it. I was attending a community college at the time as an auxiliary to my work schedule. So, ultimately, the Congress of the United States convened and they debated the matter and they came to this conclusion. And the President of the United States concurred with this conclusion. And the conclusion of the matter that faced America, particularly in the 2005 to 2010 timeframe, was this. We live in times of national security uncertainty. And as a result of that national security uncertainty, a patriotic American is ready and willing to give up some of their freedoms and privacy in the interest of national security. That was the general gist of the conclusion that Congress came to. And apparently the federal courts of the United States were split. There were federal lawyers and judges that said, you know what, still, we want to know that you guys are getting warrants. If you're going to be tapping somebody's phone in this country, if you're going to be monitoring people's purchasing activity and their phone calls and their text messages and emails, even monitoring them inside their house with hidden cameras and thermal imaging devices. If you're going to be doing stuff like that, okay, intercepting people's phone calls with stingray devices and things like that, we want a warrant, okay? This is what some federal judges and lawyers believe. They said, okay, you're the national security agency, you're the national security apparatus of this country. Yeah, we live in times of national security uncertainty, but still, we still have rights as citizens to know what our government is doing and why, despite these being times of national security uncertainty. So, because of that, we want court-issued searchable warrants issued in the event that you have to surveil somebody, particularly if this person is not particularly under any suspicion of being involved in any terroristic activity, jihadism, etc. We want court warrants. And then there were other federal judges and lawyers that said, we don't think warrants are needed. We just want patriotic people to let the government do their job. Now, I remember back then, being a 24-year-old man, hearing this debate for the first time. I agreed with the first set of judges and lawyers. I thought that, well, that makes sense. If U.S. citizens who are not exactly under suspicion of being terrorists or being involved in terrorism activities are being surveilled, they deserve to have some sort of a summons or searchable legal document or some kind of writ that lets them know that this is happening. However, ultimately, the mode of thinking that, well, that might give too much away if we did that. We're just going to keep this as sort of a clandestine thing for now. That line of thinking pretty much overruled all others, and it got to the point where even big data companies were objecting to these various spying mechanisms. For example, Apple Computers, which at the time was being headed up by Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Macintosh Enterprises. He instructed his electronic engineers to make their iPhones purposely with components and software that stopped the FBI in particular from being able to hack into them on the back end. And the FBI actually turned around and sued Apple in federal court to stop making their iPhones like that, because the FBI wanted to be able to go into these iPhones on the back end and pull data from them. And the FBI won eventually, and Apple had to make all of their iPhones accessible to federal law enforcement auxiliaries. And you know what? Again, if the access to data is of a noble cause, I don't have any problem with it, quite frankly. But when you talk about something like gang stalking, which was obviously something that was implemented, in my opinion, to disrupt the activities of not... Go ahead. But don't be surprised when one of them pulls out a tablet okay, or some other recording device, hits the record button, and gives 1 hour lectures time after time after time after time after time, letting not only the American people know, not only the Congress of the United States, but the whole world know there's a human rights catastrophe happening in America right now, where a bunch of buffoonish, useful idiots, liaisons, and stalkers are using a signaling mechanism to basically terrorize people. And then put these conversations online for the whole world to see. I mean, you ever seen those advertisements, ladies and gentlemen, on your city bus or in your grocery store or in your doctor's office where it says, call this number if you want to participate in a medical study? This is what the medical study is about. This is what its aims are and its goals are. This is the day and time it starts. This is the day and time the study concludes. This is what it pays. These are the risks. These are the benefits. Here's the email for inquiries. So a simple flyer. And if you're interested in the study, you can call the information and set up something. If you're not interested in the information, go about your day. Gang stalking ain't too much like that. MK Ultra was, if I'm not mistaken, which was basically, it was a government, if I'm not mistaken, it was an FBI procedure that happened in the 1970s, in which U.S. soldiers in various settings were knowingly and unknowingly exposed to LSD, psychedelic drugs, and other forms of chemical and electronic mind manipulation. Okay, this was actually a program. You can find out more about it on FBI.gov. So at least some of the soldiers who went into that human behavior experiment knew what they were getting themselves into. Gang stalking ain't like that. Gang stalking ain't like that. I personally did not answer a flyer that I saw or an advertisement in my local paper. Call this number now if you want to participate in a gang stalking study. It's going to be a 30-year experiment. You may get run over with a car and you might not. Some of the undercover operatives in your gang stalking campaign may intentionally fling germs at you from all odd kind of angles and try and get you sick. You're going to experience occupational and interpersonal disruptions by strangers who are signaled to you. You may even get into some sort of an altercation with one of our more violent stalkers, maybe one of the ones that just got out of jail, who can't spell his own name, but he sure as hell knows how to read a signal good. We'll signal him right to your location and we will document everything that happens in the interest of national security. You'll be constantly surveilled. You may become sick or injured because of what we do. And the action is non-stop. You'll be called psychotic if you come forward with the information. Society has already been programmed to do that, as has the psychiatric and psychological communities in this country. We're going to alienate you from everyone you know. We're going to implement policies that will make you destitute, or will try as hard as we can. And you may even see an early grave because of the thuggery and buffoonery that we pester you with. Now, don't get your don't let everything we just said put a damper on your spirit or scare you off. Wait till you hear what this program pays. It pays zero, ladies and gentlemen. And you get to be a test subject for human experimentation and human behavior modification for your government. And you're expected to lay back and take it, because if you don't, we're going to say you ain't a patriot. And we might just send some stalkers around you now and again to fling germs at you. And mind you, our signaling mechanism is sharp. We're using vehicular maneuvers these days to point you out. We're using hand signals, verbal commands, physical gestures. We're getting innovative with it now, ladies and gentlemen. We're using signals that are hard to see now, because there's a fella down in Miami who done figured us out and put us on YouTube with it. So we're going to have to change some things up. Don't worry, it'll be a blast. You get to do something for your country, and hey, like Ronald Reagan said in the 80s, remember? It's not, ask not what your country can do for you, but rather what can you do for your country, ladies and gentlemen. I want to put you in a gang stalking campaign tonight. It is going to be a blast. You are going to be the ultimate patriot. You say you want to be Christ-like America. We are going to allow you to be just like Jesus Christ. We are going to crucify you with this gang stalking campaign. We are going to essentially make you a replica of the crucifixion, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to do it with a big smile on our face. You are going to help us make America better. You are going to help us make America safer. You are going to help our national security apparatus and our federal law enforcement apparatus and our Department of Defense apparatus. You are going to help them progress light years into the future with all the data we collect from you as a targeted individual. Ladies and gentlemen, you are going to love this. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. We are going to put you in a gang stalking campaign, ladies and gentlemen. You are going to get run over by cars. It is going to be phenomenal, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to be going to the hospital every other month. And boy, let me tell you something. Where do we get you in those hospitals? We are going to set it up, ladies and gentlemen, to where the nurses and the doctors, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the nurses and the doctors are signaling one another, ladies and gentlemen, to give you the absolute worst medical care they possibly can. Ladies and gentlemen, we have pulled out all the stops. We are going to institute workplace mobbing against you, ladies and gentlemen. And we are, ladies and gentlemen, join us. Let us be your open air jailers. We have all kind of useful idiots and thugs we're going to send your way, ladies and gentlemen. All of them have a problem. All of them have a past. All of them have a chip on their shoulder. And we are going to signal them to your exact location over and over and over again, just so we can sit back and eat popcorn and watch the sparks fly. Ladies and gentlemen, you have never seen anything like this. Okay, we are doing TV commercials. You can call us. We will put you in gang stalking campaigns by the dozens, ladies and gentlemen. Call us at this number and let us disrupt you. And that can be their slogan, right? All they need is a celebrity endorsement. Okay, maybe they could find a nice retired professional athlete everyone remembers, or a nice retired actor or actress to do the sales pitch. Wouldn't that be beautiful, ladies and gentlemen? One of your favorite actors or actresses doing a spot on TV for the U.S. federal government, pitching gang stalking to the masses. Just letting you know, ladies and gentlemen, everything you have to gain and everything you have to lose. Join us, ladies and gentlemen. It won't cost you a thing. Just give us your name, address, and social, ladies and gentlemen, and we will put you square in the middle of the most heinous political crime of the 21st century. We talking about gang stalking, ladies and gentlemen. It is a post 9/11 protocol. It is in the interest of national security, ladies and gentlemen. You don't want to see another 9/11 happen, do you? Well, if you don't, well, call us at this number. We will get you together. You will suffer, and so will your family. But I'll tell you what, we'll sure gather one hell of a lot of data off of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, as the saying goes, there's two sides to every story. And that can be said for Congress as well. The American people knows what we saw in the aftermath of 9/11. We saw the frenzy. We saw the legislation. We saw the debates. We saw the fallout. And now we're looking into the future. Congress also saw these things happen, but they saw it from an administrative role, an administrative perspective, as opposed to the perspective of the citizens. The citizens just rolled with the punches, gave their opinion, and went on about their lives. Congress monitored the people to make sure that there were no uprisings or anything that could cause any type of destabilization to the American Republic. And ultimately, Congress had to have had some sort of a idea of the social engineering element of the implementation of these national security measures, including gang stalking. There's a social engineering element there too. We are going to make America more Christian. We are going to make America more straight-laced. We are going to make America more pro-social. We're going to make America less antisocial. We're going to make you more conscious. We're going to make you more realistic. We are going to make you more hardworking. We are going to make you more feasible. We are going to make it so that every American, quote unquote, understands their place. Not know their place, because after all, a pauper can become a prince in the flick of a finger, in the snap of a finger. A slave can become a king in the snap of a finger. A poor man can become an emperor in the snap of a finger. It's just the nature of the world we live in, ladies and gentlemen. So it's not about knowing your place, it's about understanding your place. That's part of what gang stalking aims to do. Put everyone in their social caste hierarchy and let them know this is where you rank on the American societal scale. And we're going to use street theater to illustrate that to you. Ladies and gentlemen, 9/11 is no excuse for the breach of constitutional rights and liberties. 9/11 is no excuse for the breach of my Bill of Rights. 9/11 is no excuse for the breach of my inalienable rights. And 9/11 is no excuse for the implementation of clandestine street signaling that could bring about harm, sickness, and disruption. Thank you for listening today, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the 9/11 lecture.